Foreign Minister Landsbergis, we really appreciate your visit to our studio. After this very, very busy and long day in Georgia. So you listed this afternoon after a meeting with the president of Georgia, listed two goals of your visit. So at the end of this day, is this trip and your mission, your goals, is it fulfilled? What's your?
I hope so. You know, one can never know, and until if we calculate by the results that are only will become clear in a couple of days or a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Because just sending a signal, right? It's just one step, but actually achieving the reconsideration of what we think would be a betrayal of Georgian people's interest would be a real achievement. But you know, we cannot tell that yet today.
So to be more clear, what's the signal about, and why the visit was necessary?
Well, because this is, you know, what we wanted to say, that this is serious. And honestly, during the conversations today, we were presented with a number of times where Europe, you know, raised yellow flag, orange flag, you know, whatever flag, saying that this is not right, this is the wrong direction, and nothing happened. Mm-hmm. And I think that this created, you know, a certain pattern where Europe might seem, from certain perspective, as a complacent. You know, nothing will happen. I mean, you know, people will just talk, they will be unhappy, and then it will all come down. So one of the goals that we had, we would say, look, I mean, that might have been an impression in the past, and this impression had to do very much with
granting candidacy?
Granting candidacy and in your previous and visa facilitation and many other things, is that, and even for us, you know, kind of we hear Georgian people when we think about Georgia. So losing that is a very big decision.
What do Georgian people say?
We've met representatives from.
When you hear that, what's their message?
Well, I mean, it's clear. I mean, it's obviously clear that that Georgia belongs to Europe. This is the message that we hear loud and clear. There's no noise, so to say, in this message that, you know, that would get you off track, where you would start doubting whether, you know, this a forced decision, you know, this is an ambiguous, a short-term decision. This is a, you know, constitutional in its spiritual sense, you know, something that country and its people bases its reality upon. So this is so that's why the visit was needed, to really ring the bell and raise a red flag of the brightest red color that you can imagine, and saying, look, this might happen. You might actually make a fateful decision that would derail all the efforts that you, the government before you, that the people, that your supporters in Europe that made.
That's why you called it's brutally honest meetings, right?
Yes.
The press conference. Just to be more clear about your expectation, not expectation, but maybe your wishes, what you advise to the government of Georgia, Georgian Dream authorities. What would be, you are talking about the withdrawal of this law, right?
I mean,
taking it back.
Using an opportunity.
And not coming back with the changed one, with some amendments, etc. Because we've heard a little bit, not a little, but different message from the U.S. State Department.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've tried to explain it during the press conference. You know, we have to be clear as to what is being fixed by this law.
Yeah.
If it's transparency that the government wants, then there are ways, how the European ways, where the European Commission and, you know, partner countries such as Lithuania are able to help. You know, for example, we have extremely strict laws when it comes to party financing in Lithuania. They're in complete compliance to the European regulations. Right? Nobody can finance political candidates, just the state. This is the law in Lithuania. So we can share these things. It's incredibly transparent. But if your goal is to go against the non-governmental organizations that you find not to your liking because they raise questions that you don't like, well, this is not democratic, and this is not in compliance with the European standards. Because even from my perspective, we do have NGOs in Lithuania that do not like what the government is doing on basically every field imaginable. And it's not just Lithuania, every other European country. This is the way it works. This is the way Europe works. This is the way democracy works.
You emphasized that what was the goal of this law.
Yeah.
And you caught it very well, of course. And to look at it from a broader perspective, what is the goal of the steps of the Georgian Dream government? What is your view after all these meetings?
Look,
today?
My goal here is not to advise the Georgian government. I don't want to cross the lines of state sovereignty. Georgian government has a mandate from its people that is recognized by international community. Therefore, it's up to them, to decide how they want, to fulfill their obligations given through the election, through the constitution, through the, commitments that they made publicly. It's up to them. The point that we're making is that you now stand on a crossroad. You either choose path A or B. One leads to European community, different one, well, brings you closer to Russia. For me, it is clear. But then again, I'm not a Georgian politician.
What else has become clearer for you after meeting with all the people, the Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, Speaker of the Parliament, with other?
A couple of things. First of all, that we have to be very clear to our European partners, and Georgian society has to also amplify this message to what really this law is about. Calling it a Russian law is a catchy thing, and there is a logic behind it, because it's actually, looks like the law that is being written in Moscow. But explaining, really ad verbatim what it means, what will happen if this law comes in place, what will happen before the election, what will happen to a number of NGOs, and this is what needs to be amplified. We will relay this message the way that we understand. It's also important for you to do it. The second thing is, if I may, is that it's truly worrying what we see happening in the street when it comes to intimidations and brutality.
Yeah.
And this has to stop. The intimidations are concerted. That means that they are not ad hoc, events here and there. It's obviously planned, organized, and I'm sure, absolutely, that those who organize, or the government has means and instruments to make it stop. As a legitimate power in the country, this is again goes against the European path. When
you say stop, yeah, and when we talk about the European path, they can, some law enforcement people, they beat some people very brutally. Yeah. They stop then. I hope you also mean investigation.
Yeah, of course.
On the cases like that, I'm sure that.
Of course, yeah. We raised this question. Yeah, investigation, and stopping in the whole package is not just physically not to do it anymore, but how do you convince the people that because peaceful protest has to be allowed everywhere, and it has to be protected actually, so that people can have a voice in the matters that are important to them.
And they say this violence is encouraged, and we watch it. I'm not in the position to assess it and name it. But what human rights defenders say, that's the case, that this violence is encouraged, and it looks like that.
It was
at this spot.
We
protest.
We brought it up on every meeting that we had today.
Yeah, about the meetings. Could you may I ask a question? I know it was asked already, but because Georgian Dream representatives use several narratives, and one of them is about global party of war, another one is about Georgian Dream taking country to the European Union, and that there will be a membership in 2030, but before that, at the end of this year, they say for sure, definitely, we will have accession talks open with the EU. Did they bring all those meeting you?
No. We would not discuss in detail. Mostly that the conversation was about the law itself, but the representatives tried to argue why the law is needed, why transparency is needed, and nobody doubts that transparency is needed. I don't think that there are a lot of people in Georgia who would go against transparency. The problem is that there is this notion that it's not about that. Talking about the narratives. So I think that we managed to kind of explain that they are not completely true, or the way that we see it differently, from our perspective. So one is that the law, that in its current form and the way that it is presented, with the goals that it has, is incompatible with Georgia's transatlantic ambition. So that's number one, and it's on Georgia's current government. It's their responsibility. If Georgia is unable to take another step towards Europe, it's on this government, because it's their decision. They made this. It's their responsibility. So that's about narrative one. Second narrative is it's just sad because it's a narrative that we hear every time from coming from Kremlin. Certain people in our societies as well, they spread these narratives. In most cases, they are aggressively anti-Ukrainian, pro-Russian, and it's unfortunate to hear from a representative of ruling party here. And I've mentioned that before, because that the only warring party, an actual warring party, is in Moscow, and it waged the war against Georgia and still keeps part of Georgian territory under occupation.
So I guess those messages were not for you, but for the Georgian society, part of the Georgian society, which they quite often frighten with this, because they like to say that they keep peace, they sustain peace in this country, and otherwise the country would be dragged into the war with Russia. Also, I would like to ask you the question, because after meeting with Shalva Papuashvili, Speaker of the Parliament, you and some of your colleagues, one at least Estonian colleague, had to correct some of his messages after the meeting. How to compare all these meetings? Where did you feel that? I know I understand you cannot discuss details with us of those meetings, but where did you have a feeling that you speak, you have more common language with your host? There were several.
Well, honestly, you feel that some people that we meet have some different level of uneasiness. Probably that's the way I would put it. That means that some representatives are, they have I would say that probably what translates as to a lot of trust in their own action. That what they are doing is right and they don't need to change course. Well, others not necessarily so. So that's the only difference that I would say. But then again, I don't think that it is a big secret that these were not easy meetings.
Thank you. And what should happen exactly in 2 weeks? What you are expecting? What will be your message to your capitals, to Brussels? And I will have one more question.
Mostly to explain what we heard, and I've mentioned that previously. You know, the message from the civil society about their worries, their expectations, and the way that they are being dealt with. You know, we talked about the brutality, and then a bit more clarification to our partners in Europe as to what actually is going to happen if the law is being adopted, and why the Georgian government wants this law so much. And I think that it needs to be explained, it needs to be repeated. And we're planning to do, we talked with the colleagues that in a couple of weeks we will meet again in Brussels, and definitely we will raise this issue.
If it is adopted, we see that there are a lot of warnings coming from friends and partners of Georgia. And it is also noticeable that you also, with your colleagues, repeated several times, we are friends of Georgia. Yesterday I've heard from Lia Tuvas, member of the parliament, that we are not agents. So it's something that someone wouldn't imagine some time ago, that friends would need to state that every time. What would happen next if the law is adopted, if the Georgian Dream enacted, I would say, because it is already passed with 3 hearings and veto is expected now. So
I think that the very difficult discussions would start in Brussels, and not just in Brussels, but in other capitals, as to how to approach question. And I think that these debates would be happening in new reality. In the one that Georgia has not yet found itself ever after declaring and setting on the transatlantic path. Meaning that this will be the area where it will be quite clear that most likely you are unable to take another step.
You never mentioned today a word sanction. One of your colleagues did.
Yes.
You do it intentionally?
We talked about this with colleagues. Okay. It's always
colleagues here, you mean?
Yes, with the ones that visited. European politics is difficult, and in some cases, I would like to keep all options on the table, meaning that we can talk about sanctions or something like that, but not necessarily will happen, or in the form that one imagines it today. So there are instruments, there are ways how the decisions by the government can be reflected by European Union. And I mean that the biggest sanction that one can imagine, understanding that that it was a very good journey, it didn't end the way that people wanted.
It's sad.
It is.
And it's sad that I wish I would interview you about some successful process, successful trip of Georgia towards the EU and the NATO. We haven't even mentioned NATO integration in our interview, and that's very sad.
If I may, just one last point.
Yes,
when I heard Mr. Ivanishvili's speech, it was one of the most heartbreaking moments when it comes to the way that I perceive Georgia. It really pained to listen. And I sat down and started writing what became then a tweet. It was like writing a letter to a friend who is doing something that might be irreversible, and you would like it to stop and not do it, because if it crosses the line, the coming back might be extremely difficult. And when we worked so hard, with the previous government, with current government, to help you every step of the way to get where you're currently, and to lose it all, it's beyond a heartbreak. So sorry for this dramatic.
Did you want to meet Ivanishvili?
I wouldn't, I wouldn't say no if the opportunity would arise.
Okay, it was not played.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and see you.
Thank you.
In Venice.